this deal that makes him the highest guaranteed player in NFL history other than a quarterback get done. How did that get done? Let us know because, man, it came out of right field last night.
Well, honestly, it wasn't really so much out of nowhere. I mean, for me, and this was something I was starting to hear about early yesterday because, it's really as soon as he showed up to minicamp, I think that was something that was pretty meaningful for the team. They like to see him. They like to start that bonding process. I know he liked it. He got along with the coaches. And that, when he showed up, that sort of accelerated things. And, they were close enough that they basically around 2 p.m., they kind of got back together and hammered out the final portions of the deal. And then, by about 6:30 p.m., he was a lot richer. It was a huge mega deal. It was really exactly what he wanted, and sort of have a time span of their own. But to do it before everyone breaks for the summer, I think is probably a win for both parties.
And Rapoport's with us. A lot of people were wondering, all right, they're going to get this deal and they're going to get this done. Are you surprised at the massive number that Fletcher Cox ended up getting?
I'm really not because, Todd France of CAA is his agent, and he did a very similar deal for Marcell Dareus last year. I think it was around this time, or it might have been actually the beginning of camp, but, sort of similar player, similar productivity, defensive way, and the cap having gone up just a little bit. So really, it's the same type of deal. Fletcher Cox signing anything that was less than Marcell Dareus, so I would be where it came in.
We're talking with Rapoport, and we're going to have to put you on hold real fast. We got a little bit of a bad connection there. He kind of going in and out on us a little bit, so we'll try to get a better connection with Ann there. But he mentioned, Pete, that he's not really surprised that Fletcher Cox got the deal, and he mentioned Dareus. And then when he comes back on with us, I want to talk to him about Jim Schwartz and how much this defense may have been the reason why they were willing to give him the money.
Sure, to your point that Jim Schwartz might be getting a lot of people paid, including Marcell Dareus and Ndamukong Suh. They both got big paydays after playing for Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, so Ian, we'll bring you back in and ask you about that. Does he get this kind of deal if Jim Schwartz doesn't get hired? I mean, because the other guys all have something in common. They all played for Schwartz. Does Schwartz's defense make the Eagles feel confident to give him that money that he will be productive enough to justify it?
Well, there were a lot of reasons why the Eagles want to do a deal like this, and I think rewarding a really good player is one of them. But, when the Eagles were really good for a long time, pre-Chip Kelly, when Andy Reid was in his heyday, they thrived on doing these deals early, presenting a number that was big enough for a player to accept before hitting free agency and before playing it out. One of the real sort of risks for the Eagles here was that Fletcher Cox played it out and was great and, really, really featured in Jim Schwartz's defense and became, instead of just a really, really good player, like a huge megastar, and the payday would go up even more.
Ian, how about the...
so I think this certainly makes a lot of sense for the Eagles.
How about the timing of this and what you're talking about? Because there's some people who said that the Eagles had the leverage. They could have used the franchise tag on him. Does the timing surprise you, or does it make sense?
They could have used the tag on him, yeah. But that's a thing that we see. There's I think 6 tagged players now, but it's really not something that a team wants to use. It's really what you use if you can't get a deal done. And for this one, the roadmap was so clearly laid out for Marcell Dareus last year. Same agent, a team that was motivated to do an extension. This really just made a lot of sense to do rather than wait, play it out, delay, and then, if you tag a player, that's a, 14 or whatever $1 million hit on your salary cap year one. There's a lot of negatives to the franchise tag too. This one to me for the Eagles made a lot of sense.
And Rapoport's with us, and looking at the Fletcher Cox deal, this is going to be, Howie Roseman signed a lot of his own guys. They've given a lot of money this offseason. More than anybody else in the league, right? They've dealt out over what? Over $100 million more
$140 million more than the next team.
How's he fitting these guys in? How's he doing it?
Well,
That was a
know,
good
they didn't
reaction
have a
by
ton
you,
of
by the way.
Well, thanks. They didn't have a ton of players, to do it on previously, and they shed a lot of contracts. Pay Byron Maxwell $60 million, then you end up ditching him. You pay DeMarco Murray all the money, you ditch him. You created a lot of space, and in a year they've really recreated. Before we know what happens on the field, they've recreated a lot of what made them successful, which is drafting players, developing them, and then signing them to big deals before they come up for free agency. Bradford's the only one that was a little different from that, but even he was developed and a known commodity from the year before. So I think basically you sort of shed all the weight from the Chip Kelly era, and you get back to what made the Eagles a really, really good team 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, and if you look at the deal, and it's kind of structured in a way that would penalize the Eagles if they tried to get out of it, kind of like the T.O. deal from years ago where they tried to get out of that thing and he knew it. If they try to do something like that, they're going to get penalized, but I guess it shows you their long-term commitment to him because, he's going to make, $55 million when he signs his name on this line. And, this is unbelievable. So it seems like both sides really want this marriage together for long term. This isn't just one of those deals where you see a lot of money and you're like, well, they can get out of this thing whenever they want to. This one doesn't seem to be that way.
Yeah, they could theoretically get out of it after a year, but then you would have paid $36 million, to a player for 1 year. That doesn't make sense. So if he's alive and breathing in 9 months, he gets $55 million fully guaranteed. You're right. This is a deal where both sides says this is going to work. And that's one nice thing about signing your own players. Like, the Eagles are not going to wake up and all of a sudden Fletcher Cox is a bad player. He is a very, very, very good player. Now, things might happen. You could get injured. There's all sorts of things that can happen. But they're not going to have missed on a player evaluation because they know how good he is. He knows how good he is. He's familiar with, his defensive line coach. There's a lot of reasons to like this Fletcher Cox and Eagles marriage. And, people can talk about how much money is. Yes, it's a lot of money. To me, a worse thing is not having great players that you can spend that money on.
Ian, so Mike and I have talked a lot about the deals that the Eagles have made. Is Howie Roseman getting a lot of praise this offseason for his work that he's done? Is he getting praise from around the league?
It's tough to praise someone for signing your own guys. Nobody praises for that. You get praised for great finds. You get praised for, luring a free agent away from another team. But the reality for these deals is, first of all, no one knows whether they're good deals or bad deals until 3 years from now. Second of all, this is kind of what you're supposed to do. This is what the Eagles got away from. If you look at what successful GMs do, they develop their own guys and sign them. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I will tell you what people have noticed, though, is that the Eagles are being run like a business again. And that's really the biggest difference is they're doing smart, good deals. You don't screw the player. You don't screw the team. They're just smart, good deals for the long term and not throwing a lot of money around and making splashy things. There's nothing splashy about signing a defensive tackle to an extension. But it's, I think, a smart move for the organization.
Yeah, and you wonder if Chip Kelly's still here, does this deal get done? Or do they just let him flap in the wind and say, hey, you play out on that deal?
If Chip Kelly's still here, I'm not sure how much salary cap space they have for it.
That's another good point. Ian Rapoport, NFL Network. Fletcher Cox is a monster deal. He's back in Philly for 6 years, and hopefully very productive years. Ian, always a pleasure, man.
All right, thanks, guys.